Hey everybody, in our first video we started working on this score bar that's built in Unreal Engine's motion design tools. In particular, we're using the scene state system to control the bar in real time. However, in that previous video we really only got as far as being able to reveal the bar and hide the bar with a single checkbox in Rundown. So we have a lot of work to do to, let me close this and say yes, and we want to get the numerical values working and also this set of timeout indicators, possession indicators. So we're going to break this up into two videos. In this first video, we're going to work on the general layout, particularly up to the numerical values. And then in the final video of this series, we'll take a look at how we can get the timeout indicator and the possession indicators working. That'll be pretty easy after we've gotten through this. This is going to be the more extensive video of the series where we focus on how do we adjust these numbers so that we're triggering animations as well as value changes visible to the viewer while we're using the Rundown scene state functionality. So let's start digging into that. I'll double click on where we left off in terms of building the level. So I'm not going to save changes to that level. And so we have our rectangular bar with some slant here. It's a rectangle and it's got a gradient in it, and we've got just a couple animations. This is the default sequence that it's not really doing anything, but it's kind of our default state of our layout. And then we have a bar out animation, and that's going to collapse the rectangle itself in terms of its mesh size. So here there's a horizontal value. It's starting out at 270, and that collapses down to almost nothing, 15 or so. At the same time, it's being pulled out of the screen by a position animation here for the score bar group. So the score bar stays in place, and then at this frame 20, it starts to get pulled out of the frame, and that's how our animation works. So now any actor that we add to our scene that is a child of the score bar group, that'll fall out of frame at the same time when that descends, and anything else is going to have to either be animated or auto-sized and auto-positioned if we want it to follow along with the rectangle. So we keep those things in mind, and let's get going. I think, and as I've been practicing, I probably moved these keyframes over. I think that when we left our last video, it was more something like this, where on the first frame we had a keyframe position for the group, and then a keyframe for the width of the bar, and then the bar starts to collapse, and then here we keyframe the group again, and then the remainder of the collapse of the bar happens as it's being pulled out of frame. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is add more of an inner rectangle that's a bright white so we can contrast with our indicators. So I'm going to do that by duplicating the existing rectangle. And let me just go back to our main sequence for layout, select this rectangle and Control D to duplicate it. And now that it's in place, I want to be able to set it apart from the original rectangle. So I'm going to go to the colors here and this linear gradient and change that around. I want the top to be kind of a light gray, and then I'm going to set the bottom color to be a bright white. And so that way we've got the shading, but right away we start to see this flickering effect. And what's happening here is both of these rectangles are translucent. Translucency is enabled, but they're occupying exactly the same three-dimensional space. They're at 0, 0, 0. They're the same size. And as a result, we get this flickering effect. So what we want to do is make sure Unreal enforces a front-to-back relationship in terms of the rendering of these translucent objects. To do that, I'm going to go to the score bar group here and add a modifier in the operator stack. So in the operator stack panel, I have the modifiers page selected, and the modifier I'm going to add is translucent sort priority. Now the default value for this is outliner bottom first in terms of sort mode. What that means is anything that's lower in the motion design outliner is going to get the foreground priority, and anything that's higher up in the outliner is more in the background. And this is in keeping with typical broadcast software, where as we add content to our outliner, it gets added further and further down the list, but that's the newer items that have been added, so we want those in front. Now if you'd like a more Photoshop, Premiere or After Effects kind of thing, you can switch to outliner top first, and this will behave more like the layers in those tools, where layers on top in the outliner are the foreground items and layers underneath are falling into the background. There are a few other options. There's camera distance, so then you can actually place these objects in 3D space, and whatever's closer to the camera will always be in front. And then there's manual, where you can actually designate indices. I'm just going to stick with outliner bottom first. That way, as I add content to our bar, we'll just keep adding more and more items listed in the outliner, and they'll be in front. Now I want this rectangle to automatically scale with the container rectangle, this blue one. So I'll select this second rectangle, and again I'm in operator stack, and I'm going to add an auto size modifier. So add modifiers, auto size, and I can reference the previous item in the outliner, or I could designate a specific actor. So I'm going to stick with designating one, and the reference actor will be the first rectangle. So now whatever happens in terms of the size of the first rectangle is going to be passed on to the second. And I have the option to add some padding, so I want to expose the blue rectangle around this. So I'm going to use negative padding values to make this a little bit smaller. So a -3 vertical and a -3 horizontal, and that shows off our blue outline nicely. And finally, there's one last thing. When I duplicated this rectangle, one of the things that the motion design and Unreal Engine toolset does is it also duplicates all of the keyframes that were in the original object's sequences. So if I go to Rectangle 2 and go to Motion Design in the sequencer, and I go to Bar Out, what we can see is Rectangle 2 has keyframes. And these keyframes are for the size, the mesh size of the original rectangle, not the new one. So I don't want these keyframes. So I'm going to select this track and I want to delete it. And now only the first rectangle is keyed along with the parent group. Let me just check on the in animation, and only the group is being animated there. So now with Bar Out, this white rectangle ought to animate automatically, yep, with the blue one. So there we go. Now we don't have to do any other animations of that. And finally, our score bar has like that possession indicator in the middle. So I need one more rectangle, Control D. Now that is in the foreground, and I could see that for sure if I go over to the details. And let's just reverse this gradient. So we'll have the top be pure white and the bottom a little bit of a gray. And you can see that we're not getting any flicker, and now that's the gradient that we're showing. The only thing is I'd like this to be small, and I'd like the sides to be vertical. So let's get rid of the slant. So 0 in the left and 0 in the right. And we'll also tighten up that bevel. Instead of 8 pixels, let's make that 4. And finally, let's add more negative padding to this in the auto size. So you can see that when I duplicated the second rectangle, it also duplicated the modifier. And the horizontal padding, let's pull that in a bit. Let's see, -100, it's a little big, -110, little small, -105. Yeah, we'll just go with that. So there we go. Now we've got our rectangular background shapes, Control-Shift-S. And because the new rectangles, both of them have auto size, they'll scale automatically with the parent triangle, the parent rectangle. Let's just check where things are sitting in our default sequence. Wonderful. All right, so back to our scene state work, we have 2 numerical values to display. So let's get working on those. First, I'll need to add the 3D text actor. So let's go to the motion design mode, and I'll choose the actors panel and double click on text actor. Gives us a text actor. Select that in the outliner, and let's make this look a little more attractive. I'm going to make the typeface bold. We'll set an initial value of 0. And I'd like the layout to be centered. So I want the pivot point to be centered on the characters. So I'm going to center horizontally and center vertically. And now I also want to set some color and extrudes. So we can have a bevel that has a different color than the front if we've extruded first. So I can't add a bevel if the extrude hasn't been used. So I'm going to extrude 5 units, and we'll bevel for 1 unit. And now the bevel color is white, and I can set the front color to black to really contrast with our backdrop. Say OK. So nice little letter there. And I want to position it here, but it needs to be a child of the score bar group so that it'll travel with that. So I'm click and drag in the Motion Design Outliner, make it a child of the score bar group. Let's go to Details, and the transform will zero out the transforms. That puts it at the center, and it's not showing up here. And the reason is that the text actor is not translucent by default. And since it's not translucent, it is not adhering to the translucent priorities set by the score bar group. So let's scroll down in the properties of our text actor and look for our blend mode. Here it is under Material, Blend Mode. Opaque is the default, and we want to change that to translucent. And now that it's translucent, it's going to adhere to the translucent sort priority rules set by the score bar group. Okay, so let's position this roughly into place. We can have it here. Let's take a look at that -68. Let's set that to -65. And I'm going to notch it down a little bit and scale it down. Let's do a 0.8 in terms of scale. Oh, this was unlocked, so now I've got to manually type that in for all of these and lock that so that future scaling will match properly. And let's also put a -1 here to kind of center that a little better vertically inside our rectangles. Okay, so this F2, rename it, will be our left score. And that should be pretty good. Let's see where we're at. We're in our sequence. So that's going to be the default layout location for this. With bar out right now, it will follow when the bar descends, but it just stays there as the bar retracts. So let's edit this a little bit. And so I'm going to extend the length of this slightly. Let's take the existing keys and push them towards the end. Gives us a little more time here when the bar is extended, and I can use that time to collapse the letter or the text. So right here at the beginning, I'll select my left score, and I'll set a key for both location and scale. And then I will make sure that, oh wait, for some reason the scale went down to 0 when I keyed that. Do not want that, so let's release this lock so that we can put in 0.8, tab 0.8, tab 0.8. That looks better. Now we can lock it. By the way, once you have 0 in your scale, all kinds of weird things can happen. So one of the things is that if I kept this locked and typed in a 0.8, then when I moved, the other two would not get that multiplier because they're multiplying by 0. So they'd still be 0. And then if this was 0.8 and this was 0 and I typed in 0.8, this would be being multiplied by like 1 over 0, which is infinity, bad stuff. So make sure it's unlocked if you've got 0, 0, 0 and you want to set your values, and then keep it locked so that everything scales uniformly. Okay, so now we've got a uniform scale of 0.8 and we've got a nice position. I'm going to keep the position where it is, but I want to collapse the size right about here as the bar is starting to encroach on it. I'm going to knock this down to a scale of 0.001. Like I said, I'm avoiding scaling down to 0, but 0.001 makes the actor effectively invisible. So that's fine. Let's select that actor again and make sure this is keyed all the way across. Go ahead and key the location as well. And then we're good. So now when this bar goes away, the score goes out and then we collapse everything else. So that's just fine. Okay, so we have our left score in terms of text. Let's go ahead and add a right score. So I'm just going to duplicate this existing actor and we'll call that right score. And we just want to put its position at +65, -1. Scale is the same, that's fine. Control-Shift-S, and let's check our bar out, because what's going to happen is with this duplication, this actor is going to have the same animation as the left score, because we duplicated that. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we stay at +65, not -65. So let's go here. Now they're overlapping, so that right score, we want that at +65. Let's key that, make sure that's good. And right here, we still also want that +65. I think those are the only two keys for the location. So now we should have both of those actors animating properly. Whoops, I accidentally set the beginning of my animation. All right, let's check this out. Nice. So now both texts scale away just as the bar is scaling away. And then, of course, if we play this in reverse, we have our reveal and everything's just fine. Fantastic. Control-Shift-S. Now we can get working on our remote control and transition logic and scene state. So again, we have a scene state actor. Currently, it has a single variable, and when we activate that Boolean, then we are displaying the bar, and when we deactivate it, we're hiding the bar. So what we want to do now is set up some remote control logic so that we can change these values. But the whole point of scene state is that we can actually animate those changes as the values are altered. And so as a result, we're going to need a few different things. First of all, we want to make sure that we can remote control change the text values in these two text actors. So I'll select the left score, and for that text, I'll reveal it to the remote control. So there's that. And the right score, likewise, reveal that. So here are the two text values that we can use to change these. If I want to put a 1 in here now, that should change. I put a 2 in here, that changes. Wonderful. So 0 and 0. And I can select each of these and drag and drop them into remote controls. So these are the properties on the actual actors. These are the controls that the operator can work with. Somehow I ended up with a decimal point there, so let's delete that, and let's delete it here as well. These are text values. Okay, so now in my motion design scene state, I'm going to need variables to adjust so that an operator can enter a value. Scene state will detect the difference between the displayed text and the entered value, and then initiate an animation and value change for the actor itself. So let's go ahead to our scene state. And since our controls, whoops, frame that up. There we are. Since our controls are text, I'm going to create string variables. So I'll add a variable, and this will be L var for the left variable, and let's make that a string. And we will add an rval variable, rvar. That's also a string. Okay, now of course we need those to be visible out here to the actor. If I compile right now, they do not appear. But if I open the expose eyes and compile, now they're both available. And so then we will share those with remote control, and there they are. And so then with these two, I can, let's set initial values here, and drag those into remote control. So now we've got string controls for the variables and string controls for the text. Now I'm going to name these controls, and so again, this is going to be lText, txt, and this will be writeText, and this will be lValue, and lValue. These are the remote control names. So one of the issues we'll have here is because these are all remote controls, it could get confusing for the operator. So Control-Shift-S, save these changes. Let's go to the content browser and open up our rundown. If I select this page and take a look at what the operator has, they're able to edit all 4 of these values, but we only want scene state to change these text values. We want the operator to change the left value and the right value. I guess I just named that, so I'll just make sure I correct that. We want to hide these from the operator, so let's get to work on that. Back to our remote control, and I'm going to name this control correctly, so rval. There we go. And to hide these two controllers so that the operator doesn't accidentally change them, all I need to do is put a pair of underscores at the end of the name. So underscore underscore, and click here. and underscore underscore and Control Shift S to save those changes. So now let's double click and open the rundown and select the page, and sure enough, we only have the two values here that we need to see, and that's the ones that the operator is going to adjust. The text values will get changed later by the scene state system itself. Now that whole underscore underscore thing, that's the default, but you can create your own conventions for that, by the way. And if you go to Edit Menu and Project Settings, just scroll all the way down to the Motion Design Playback and Broadcast section. And in here, you'll find this playable settings and ignore controller postfix. So prefix is for something in front of a word, postfix for after the word. And this current value is the only one available. It's underscore underscore. I could add something else here if I wanted to. So add, let's just say underscore hide, all lowercase, Control S. Well, I wouldn't need Control S. These changes commit immediately. Close that. And so now if I go to one of these, I can give it underscore hide instead. And now when I run the demo rundown, yeah, it's still hidden. So I only have the value controllers, these two, not these. So that's how that works. And now we're ready to work on the scene state itself. Let's do Control Shift S and start working on the logic to identify when the operator value is different than the displayed value. And then what do we want to do with that? So we're going to want an animation to be fired anytime a value is changed. So we'll need one animation for the left number and one animation for the right number. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new animation, and we'll name this left change. And I will select our left value, and let's just add a keyframe for its position and scale. And I think all I'm going to do, oh, look at that, we got keyed down to 0 again. So again, if I were to do 0.8 here, these get left at 0. If I type 0.8 in here now, all kinds of chaos happens. So uncheck this and enter in 0.8 manually everywhere, and now lock it. Okay, so that is our keyframe. And then I think I just want to compress it left to right. So that's our y-axis here. So let's just give it a few frames, half a second maybe, and we'll just compress just the y. So let's unlock this again and do 0.001. So that hides it, and make sure we set a keyframe for everything here. We might as well set a keyframe for location. And that's really the end of our little animation, right? So we only need to hide, kind of wink away the left text. It's kind of slow, so let me make that a little snappier. I'll select these two keyframes, and because I keyed all the values in both location and scale, then in my selection modifier I do have these optional curves. So I'm going to go with exponential here and see if that makes that look a little snappier. Yeah. So there we go. We'll keep that and Control Shift S. And so what we'll do is use this animation when we play forward. To hide this, we'll change the value, and then we'll play it backward after we've changed the value. Let's do the same thing for the right score. So we'll have to add another animation, F2. Let's call that right change, R-I-G-H-T, change. And for that, we will key our right score. So let's add a key. This time it stayed at 0.8. Interesting. All right, and we'll key its location as well. Go about 15 frames. Yeah, and the location jumped to 0. So I don't know what's going on there. Let's go back here and make sure that's a positive 65. Key that. And 15. And we just want to key the size here to be 0.001. There we go. Key everything. And let's bring the end of the animation to about here. So we finally want to apply our little exponential curve. So this can be nice and snappy. All right, and backwards. Okay, Control Shift S. So we've got our two animations, and now we can have scene state work with those. So let's go to scene state. Now the first thing we need to do is be able to detect if the value entered by the user, by the operator for these strings, if that is different than the score that we're currently displaying in our actors. So to be able to do that, we're going to need to be able to have visibility to the actors in this scene state blueprint. So we're going to add 2 more variables. One variable that will be the left text actor, and that is going to be a text 3D, I think it's called. Yeah, text 3D object reference, and we'll expose that. And if we select that, there it is. Oh, we didn't compile yet. That's okay. Let's go ahead and make one more. Our text actor, also text 3D, also exposed, and when we compile, there they are. So now we can select our 2 actors, the left text and the right text. So left score and right score. And so now we've pre-populated those. We don't need remote control for that. We just set it up here on the actor. And now these are in the value of these 2 variables in scene state whenever we run it. So that gives us access to those. And now we just want to create a function that'll be a utility function for us to check yes or no. Are these the same or are they different? So let's create a function for that, and we'll call it val changed. That's our function. This needs to have a couple of inputs. We need, let's go with 2 string inputs for that matter. So what we'll do is say, okay, here are the inputs. We'll add a value, set that to string, and we'll add a text. And that will also be string. Okay, so these are the incoming values. They are both string values. This is maybe a little bit confusing. So let's call this inval and showval. That way we can distinguish between what's being shown and what's coming in. Okay. We also want an output for this. It's a Boolean, true or false, whether or not we want to make a change to one of the displays. So let's create an output here, and we'll just say is changed. And that way it'll be a Boolean, true or false. True if there is a difference between these 2, and false if they are the same. Okay, these are going to be numerical values all the time, so let's convert them to integers for the comparison. So to integer, I think, to string to integer. There we are. String to integer takes for their input value and our show value. Also, string to integer. There it is. And then we check to see if these are equal. Hit the equal sign, equal, and compare these 2. All right, so this will output true if they are equal, and we want the opposite of that. If they're equal, we want false for is changed. So let's do a Boolean not, Boolean not. So we just pull from the pins, type in Boolean, and then that'll be our output. Okay, so if these are different, this will be false, they're not equal. This will flip that false to a true, and we'll be reporting that the value is changed. If they are not equal, meaning someone's entered a value that we haven't applied yet, then these will be different from one another. This will be false. We will flip that to true, and that we will be reporting is changed is true. Okay, so that function is ready to use. So now our current scene state reveals the bar and then sits around waiting for action. So one of those actions is going to be there being a difference between the left variable entered and the left displayed text actor. And if that difference happens, we want to do a bunch of actions. So we need a new state to do those actions. So I'm going to pull from the wait for action, and I'm going to create a new state, and I'll call that change left. So this way we need to change the left value. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to check to see if our values are different between these 2. So let's bring in our function. And oh, I forgot something. Our function has execution pins, and we don't want to use execution pin functions in our scene state comparisons. We don't have any execution pins in here, so we need to delete this for now. Let's double click on that value changed. To get rid of those execution pins, what we need to do is select the input and change this to a pure function. This just says that this is purely a function. It is not altering values. It's just checking values. So we're evaluating values, providing a result. We are not changing anything. So in that way, it is pure. It's not changing any values. And if it is pure, now that that checkbox is activated, then when we add it to our scene state comparison, now we don't have our execution pins. So this is reporting is changed. If we're reporting is changed, then we do want to transition to the state. What's our in value? Well, our in value is the left variable. And our show value is from the text actor. We get the text actor. We need to get the, I think it's 3D text component in this. So pull from there. Let's type in component and see somewhere in here, there should be like a 3D text. Yeah, get text 3D component. There we go. And from that, we want our formatted text value. So get text. I think it's like get formatted text. Yeah, get formatted text. There we are. This is text, not a string, but I think we'll get an automatic conversion if we drag this over. Yeah. So there we go. So we have our left text actor. We're getting the text and converting that into a string, and that's what's showing now. And our input value is whatever the variable is, which could change because the operator might change it. If these are different, then we can transition. Wonderful. So if we can transition, we end up in this change left. And so therefore we have a couple steps we want to do. First, we want to hide the left score. So we'll play our animation. So play sequence. That sequence will be our left change, and we will play that forward to hide it. Then we want to copy the left variable string into the controller for the text actor on the left. So I'm going to pull from this. The next step is going to be set in a remote control value. So, all right, what are we going to do? We are going to do a target controller. That will be our left text, and it's hidden. So our scene state can change it, but our operator can't. And we want to put a string in there. The string we want to put in is our left variable. That should do it there. And finally, we want to reveal the finished score. So we'll play our sequence again. Again, we're going to be playing left change, but this time we will play it in reverse. Show it exposes the score. And finally, when we've done all of these things, we want to go back to wait for action, because at this point now, both of our values are equal to each other. They haven't changed. So we just go back to wait for action, and that will always happen. So as soon as we've done all these steps, we go back to wait for action. That should take care of it. Let's compile that and just test that in Rundown. So Control-Shift-S. We've got no errors being reported. We'll close that. Go to our browser, open up Rundown, select. There we are. Let's preview it in. We see nothing because it's not exposed. We show it, 0, 0. Fingers crossed, if I put a 1 in here, enter, we animate, and we switch over to a 1. And 3. Wonderful. So this is animating perfectly. Go back to 0. And now we just need to set that up for the right score. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's preview out and close this and Control-Shift-S. And finally go back to our scene state. We just want to recreate all of this. So let's create a new scene state for the right score. We'll add state and change right. There we go. This will come here if our right variables are different. So double click here. We will use our function, and we want to feed that our right value. Get that. And the right text. Get that actor. We will want to get text 3D component. There we are. And we will want to get the formatted text. And then we just connect that to our showing variable. And so now we're using our right value variables. And if they are different, is changed, we can transition. And then we want to be able to play our sequence. This time we are going to change on the right, forward. We'll change our remote control value. This will be the right text is going to be changed to the value that is in our right variable. And finally, we will play our sequence again. That is the right change, and we will play it in reverse. And there we go. Let's stack these up neatly. And of course, really important, we want to go back to here no matter what. So we just leave that checked. There's our logic, and we're all set. So compile, Control-Shift-S, and let's test that in Rundown. Double-click Rundown, select our page. Let's preview that in. It should be running. We've got a green light. We will activate it. Opens up. We see our scores. Let's see if I can make us some more room here. There we go. And if we change this to 1, we get a change on the left. We change this to 2. We get a change on the right. So there, our scores are working. We can still hide that bar, go to a commercial break, and then when we're back, bring that back in with the proper score. So that is it. We are good to go with our numerical values. Now there's going to be one more video in this series where we'll focus on the timeout indicator and the possession indicator. I've got a bunch of little motion design tips and tricks in that one for you. So be sure to pick up on the 4th video when it comes out. I hope this helps. Until next time, have fun.